Welcome back to Scene Invaders. I'm Bagface, that is Dan, and today we are breaking down our top 5 what the moments of House of the Dragon episode 5.
Now, I thought this episode could have been a filler episode, but Bagface is here to explain why it's not and why it matters.
Yes, I am the resident nerd for the time being. Apparently, we have a bigger nerd coming on, maybe that's gonna out nerd me, which is awesome because everybody loves being out nerded. But until that point, y'all got me. Our number 5, what the moment for this episode: the dragon head being walked through King's Landing. Everyone is terrified. I'm assuming of the consequences of what this means because it's basically like, hey, we dropped a nuclear bomb on somebody. Aren't you guys excited? And every normal person's kind of like, nope. We're not excited. There's also a bunch of implications of everyone thinking that the dragons were gods until this point. They were kind of seen as unkillable to a lot of the normal folk, the small folk in the city. But now that they know that dragons can be killed, I think the Greens kind of fucked themselves in a certain way where they're almost loosening their grip on the people they're trying to rule because they're losing that essence of fear that these dragons are unkillable, which is not the best move for them to be making right now.
Yeah, they kind of wanted to parade it as like a victory, but the people didn't see it that way at all.
No. And there was a very key moment in that where you see a character whose name is, I'm pretty sure is Hugh Hammer. If you know the proper name, leave it in the comments. I'm pretty sure that's it, though. When he's talking about how the dragons are just meat, I think it's his son saying to him, I thought the dragons were gods and that they were unkillable. And then he's kind of just in the moment, doesn't really seem as afraid or in the same state as everybody else. And I'm thinking that it kind of comes in later in the episode, but I'm thinking that he might be one of the seeds that they are talking about, one of the bastard Targaryens that Jace and Rhaenyra are talking about in the end of the episode that they're going to go looking for, which is pretty fucking cool.
You would think that because they're giving this guy a lot of screen time lately, and it's like, why? You know?
Who is he? Right?
Yeah. He's got to have a bigger meaning. Yeah.
Laying down the track for the future episodes, which
good call.
That's all this episode felt like to me, was just placing tracks for the future episodes that are going to be even more insane than that last episode was. Our number 4, what the moment of this episode: Mysaria is making plans to kind of weasel her way and Rhaenyra's way into King's Landing and get the small folk onto her side. So they come up with a plan to send Alinda Massey to King's Landing to try and I don't really know what their plan is initially, but I'm thinking it's going to have something to do with food because everyone's really hungry. I don't know if she's going to go in and just sow discourse and try to get people to start rioting, or if they're going to try to come up with a plan in a way for Rhaenyra to actually help the people in the city without her having to be there.
Yeah, well, you could tell they're fed up. I mean, they were screaming like, we want meat when they were getting locked in.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, they're kind of fed up at the moment. So I think it would be pretty easy to turn them onto Rhaenyra's side. Yeah.
It's really starting to brew quickly. And if anybody watched the trailer for next week, it's starting to boil over already, which I'm sure is not going to be good for the state of Aegon being in the state that he is, and the Greens kind of not having the power that they had even a few episodes ago. So I'm excited to see where that goes. So our number 3, what the moment of this episode: Daemon being a sneaky little bugger and wanting to be called king, talking about how he's going to take King's Landing and have Rhaenyra rule by his side. And he ends up sending the Blackwoods to commit insane, disgusting, heinous acts against the Brackens all over the Riverlands. And it all culminates with the Riverlords finally coming to see him and telling him that essentially they will never bend the knee to a tyrant. Big balls to do to Daemon's face like that. He's kind of lost in the moment. He's been drugged for I don't know how many days now.
Yeah.
So I don't even know if he knows what's going on. But I thought that was a huge moment, especially earlier in the episode. You got Jace having that huge win in the Riverlands with the Tullys and offering them essentially Harrenhal when the war is all done, for them to bend the knee to Rhaenyra, which is a huge win. And then on the opposite side, you have Daemon kind of being stuffed, trying to take Harrenhal and doing it the wrong way. It's a nice contrast between the way that Jace is handling things to get people on Rhaenyra's side and the way Daemon is just trying to strong arm everybody and do the worst possible things. There was the baby that he had beheaded earlier in the season. So he's just kind of making mistakes all over the place and trying to strongman his way into ruling when it doesn't really seem to be working out in his favor.
I was actually surprised, though, when they said they'd rather be burned and they turned their back on him and you saw the dragon behind them. I was surprised he didn't kill them. And then later he says,
no.
well,
I think he did kill them. Those guys he definitely killed. The guys in the field, when they turn around and walk, because he's like, wow, I'm surprised they would rather die than that. And I think the implication was that he actually did kill them. I was wondering the same thing, though.
Because he said something along the lines of, they're the type of people I want to fight for me
Yeah.
if they would rather die like that. So I thought he was like trying to be like, okay, well, maybe I can turn them at some point.
If you guys know for sure, leave it in the comments, because
Yeah.
it was kind of confusing the way they edited that and cut it, but just having the big dragon head behind him right before the cut, it felt like right after that he was like, all right, blow him up. Our number 2 what the moment, almost at number 1, we're about there. Aemond closing the gates of the city and everyone just starting to freak the fuck out. Aemond's now the king regent. He's the regent.
Yeah.
He got elected by the council, or picked by the council, I guess, to rule in Aegon's stead. And his first move was a good move, which is take down the rat catchers that are hanging outside the castle still, which is insane. But the other was to close the gates of the city, which does not seem like the best move, especially when you're trying to keep people happy during a war.
He's a hothead. We know this. And for him to be, and Alicent tried to get the position. She's like, I did it when my husband was king and he couldn't rule. So I did it before.
Could you imagine?
I know what I'm doing. She's kind of upset, I feel, in the moment. And to have him such a hothead, and he's a dragon rider and he's a good fighter, it just seems like it's not going to work out in their favor, because he's so hot-headed. Like he's going to want to fight. So I just don't see it working out. And I see the people turning against him.
It's a cool juxtaposition too between Rhaenyra's side and the Green side. I feel like Rhaenyra is slowly falling into the role where she understands. I can't remember who she has the conversation with earlier in the episode. I think it's Mysaria, when she's like, let people do for you what you can't do for yourself, kind of thing.
Right.
And I think it's really like leading Rhaenyra into taking the role that she's meant to take, which is like a strategic role and kind of like a PR role, like a public relations role, versus trying to be a fighter all the time, where the Greens, they just seem like they're just pushing towards like, we need to fight as hard as we can all the time, which I don't think is going to pay off with the subjects that they need to be ruling.
Yeah, for sure. No, you make a great point there. And I think that's what it's leading to. And I definitely see the people of King's Landing turning on the Greens, for sure.
Our number 1 what the moment in this episode, the very end of the episode, it doesn't really seem like that big of a deal, but it is going to be a huge deal in the episodes coming up. We have Rhaenyra and Jace talking about the sowing of the seeds and finding other dragon riders, people with Targaryen blood, essentially bastards and people who were birthed outside of the direct Targaryen line. We're talking about them getting to ride dragons for Rhaenyra's side. And I know Jace specifically mentions Vermithor and Silverwing, which are both the second and the third biggest dragon in the realm under Vhagar. So that would be a huge win for Rhaenyra to get people to ride those on her side. It would essentially turn the tables in her favor.
Yeah.
Big moves.
She just lost like the most experienced dragon on her side, right? So that one was just killed. So Jace, really smart this episode. He does what he does with the Tullys, and then he brings this idea. And you saw him, it was a couple weeks ago, he seemed like he felt useless, kind of. Like, what am I doing here? I got to prove myself, and you don't let me do anything. And he kind of goes off. He's like, don't tell my mom until I'm already gone. He says that to someone, and then he comes back, and then he has this idea, which is brilliant. Get more dragon riders, man. So smart. So he's really pulling his weight.
And it really feels like they've been laying little hints along the way. We had that guy in the bar earlier in the season talking about how he's a Targaryen bastard and he actually has dragon blood. The girl, it was the servant that Aegon R-worded in the last season, which I never thought we'd see her again. She was supposed to drink the moon tea to get rid of any consequences that may have happened from her happenings with Aegon. But we see her again this season, and she's talking to the girl that Mysaria sent into the city. So that might be her kind of looking for dragon seed, or seeing maybe she actually kept a baby that Aegon had, so she's going to have a little bastard child of her own. Many little plot points, many little hints are being laid that we might have a nice little Rhaenyra insurrection inside of King's Landing already, and the Greens don't even know it yet.
Yeah, and do you remember last season when Eric and Eric, when they were looking for Aegon, and they ran into a child, and they were like, is that one of Aegon's? And he was like, yeah, probably one of many.
Yep.
So he's got like a bunch of bastards running around.
Yep. And if they're all pissed off at their king, that's some bad news for them.
It feels like Rhaenyra's side like really took a big hit last week with the loss. They lost that battle, and they lost Rook's Rest. So they need something to kind of turn the tides a little bit. So it seems like this idea from Jace is like the idea to turn it all around, right?
Yep. It always seems like when you get those moments of hope in Game of Thrones, that's when they tear you down the most. So I'm hoping that this all comes to fruition.
One thing I saw in the comment section from last week's video, a lot of people were complaining that we were saying it was a 2v1 that Rhaenys was doing. And a lot of people were like, it was a 1v1. Aegon didn't do shit. That's what they were saying. So like they were saying don't give Aegon credit because he didn't do shit. So that's what the biggest takeaway I got from the comment section was from last week. So we hear you guys. I guess you make a point.
I mean, it's still a whole other dragon that Rhaenys had to deal with. It's not nothing. Maybe like a 1.5 verse 1.
Yeah.
We'll give him a 0.5.
Yeah, it is still a whole other dragon. She did injure that dragon, so she did do something against it. Even though Aegon was, probably drunk. We saw him drinking wine, and he's a little whiny bitch. So we hear you. We hear you on the complaints of Aegon, but it's still a whole other dragon, like Backface said. So
exactly
1.5.
And the dragon knows what it's doing. Even if Aegon's a drunk idiot, the dragon takes on traits of him, but it's still a cognizant existing being. So it's still going to put up a fight, even if Aegon doesn't really know how to put up a fight. So yeah. 0.5 it is. That's all we got for today. Don't forget, we got a membership button down below. If you click it, you can give us as little as $1 a month. You get access to the Discord. You can talk to us directly, ask us any questions you want, play Wordle with us. It's pretty fun in there. We're also going to start adding membership-only content. So if you're interested in seeing more of our faces, unedited, raw, unscripted faces,
all the mess ups that we do.
So many. Click the button below. It'll be lots of fun. You'll get to know us a little better. Next week, we got Presumed Innocent coming up. It's getting really, really good. And it looks like this case is going to wrap up this season. So if you're into murder mysteries, stop on by. It's going to be a lot of fun. And later in the week, we got the season finale for The Boys, which is crazy. Happened so fast. And this season has been unreal. So I'm really excited for that. So make sure you stop by next week and check out our coverage of that. And we will see you guys in the next one.
Later.